Hello, everybody, and welcome or welcome back to the second shelf and to another chatty kind of discussion video. That's what I felt like filming today. And this is about the topic whether authors should or shouldn't write about certain things. More in particular, should white authors write black characters? Why not? What about diversity in books? Stuff like that. And my contribution was inspired by three videos that I will link down below. Brian from Bookish, Ollie from Criminology, and Anne from Anne Novella. They all three made a video, discussing various aspects of this topic. And I watched all three, and so should you. And I thought, well, I have maybe something to add to this. So first of all, a general remark. I want to make a distinction between a political decision about books and a literary decision about books. So, for instance, the category own voice is a political category, not a category of quality. A book isn't good or bad because it's written about something by a certain author who looks a certain way. So just to make the premise clear, I think politically, there is no doubt, of course, that publishers have an obligation to look at their author list and find authors in order to diversify. That is better for the quality overall. We know that from companies. Companies work better, make more profit if the staff is more diverse. It's just how it works. And by the way, it's the right thing to do. So there is no discussion here. The publishing world is still very white, very male-dominated, very sexist, very racist at times. So publishers need to work harder to do something about that. As for us readers, I'm not talking about me as an author, but as for us readers, I myself want to be active in finding books by all types of authors, translated works from all over the world, trying to look also at the books that I read. That's why this channel is focusing on female authors, because in most of my reading life, I read mostly men without even thinking about it. So I want to, balance this out by reading many more women now than I read men. I still read men, but I read more women. And I want to talk about that because that is my way of trying to promote female writers. So as a reader, I definitely want to diversify as well. And I'm looking for new voices because it enriches my life. That's a political kind of thing to do. But then we come to authors. And the discussion whether authors should or shouldn't write certain things that always starts with a writer can write about anything that they want. And then the parenthesis comes, like explicitly or implicitly, but they shouldn't. So that is one thing that always makes me icky a little bit. If the presentation is, of course you can, but the implication is, but you shouldn't. Because I feel, artistic freedom, either you have it or you don't. So I want to be aware of that when I enter the discussion. Of course, as a writer, my fundamental belief is I can write about anything I want. I don't write about anything I want because I can't. I'm not capable of writing fantasy. I'm not really good at certain characters. So write what you know comes into play here for me as a writer. And for me, that means simply that I have to feel a connection with what I write about. It does not mean, as a lot of people I sometimes feel in discussions, they interpret it in the way you should only write about what you experienced yourself. No, that is bullshit in my opinion, because then I can only write memoir. That would be really boring for me and for you as a reader. But I should feel an inner urge to tell a certain story. I should feel a connection to the story for whatever reason. And in that sense, all fiction is autobiographical, because there has to be a connection, whether you write fantasy or sci-fi or crime or historical fiction or other types of fiction, what we call literary fiction. There has to be a connection between you as the author and the stuff you write. I mean, of course, you can write for the money if you want to, but that's not how I want to be as a writer. So writing what I know for me means that I need to feel the urge to tell a certain story, that I need to feel a connection. And then we come to this new or relatively new related to write what you know, and that is this term own voices, which means mainly that as a white writer, I shouldn't write about Black people, or it's not my task to write about Black people. And that is a political statement. And if you feel that way, that's fine. And if you, as a writer, don't want to write, as a white person, about women because you're a white man, fine. But again, this is a political statement that has nothing to do with your urge to tell a certain story, in my opinion. And I feel that also the distinction sometimes in a discussion is not made clear between fiction and memoirs or non-fiction books, especially memoirs, because we have so much autofiction and autobiographical fiction that the lines are blurred. For me, fiction, the essence of fiction is that it's made up, first of all, and that the book has to make sense by itself, in itself, on its own. Other than life, a novel has to make sense. Life often doesn't make sense, but a novel has to make sense. And I thought it's interesting when I watched, for instance, Brian's video, and he was talking about certain white authors writing about Black people, or the Black experience, and he then said, me personally, he's not making any claims of should and shouldn't, but he personally would rather read something like 12 Years a Slave or Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. And I thought that was interesting, because those two books are memoirs, so they're not fiction, they are non-fiction. So if we want to talk about own voices, we should talk about fiction in particular, because of course I can't write a memoir, with in the center a Black gay man. That would not be a memoir. That would be fiction, now wouldn't it? So with fiction, again, own voices, I feel, is not a good category. Politically, neither. And also not literary, because in the literary sense, it's not a term that gives me anything about the quality. A book isn't good because a certain author wrote about a certain topic in fiction. And politically, I feel that, now we will come to that at the end. So I think fiction, made up stories, the power of fiction is the creative inventiveness of an author to come up with something that is fresh, that is new, a new perspective, telling me something about the human condition, giving new ideas or a new twist to old stories. and it has to be good. The plot has to be good. The characters have to be believable. So if you remember that book from some time ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, American Dirt, by a white author talking about Mexican refugees, I gave the book 1 star on Goodreads. If I find, I'll put a picture up here of the cover. There was a lot of discussion about she shouldn't write about that because she's white and it's about, Mexican refugees. I thought the book was just bad. The plot there were holes all over it. The characters were just laughably unbelievable. It was just a bad book. It didn't have anything to do. It wasn't bad because she was white. But it was bad because she didn't write a good book. So that is, I think, for me, the important category when it comes to fiction. Is it good? Is it any good? And not so much, should the author write about that? And again, I think for me, fiction is at its best when it opens up a new horizon for me. And I have 3 books that I want to show that are certainly not own voices, but perfect, for me, really perfect book. And the first is Edna O'Brien, The Little Red Chairs. Edna O'Brien is an Irish writer, and this is about the aftermath of the Balkan War, and especially the crimes committed against women there. And one particular character who is, let's say, one of the big perpetrators, and then the story revolves around that. I thought it was a fantastic book, and Edna O'Brien certainly it's not her own experience that she had, but that is what I expect from a writer, from a good writer, to take a subject and a story that she feels very strongly about it, and then tell me in a really good way about those particular characters. Another writer that does that for me is Jazz Kidd, and I put Things in Jars. That's about 1863 London, and we have Britta Devine, and she is a female detective. So I just want to emphasize that if own voices, none of the crime writers, I hope, are writing own voices. Serial killers, all types of murder, historical fiction, sci-fi, fantasy. Of course, that's not own voices. And I know, yes, I know that is not what the discussion is about. But for me, it shows the breadth and the depth of literary creativity and imagination. And we should not limit that in any way. We can criticize, I can put this down now, we can criticize if it's not good, like I criticized American Dirt, because it was just not a good book. It was a very important topic, but the book wasn't good. And by the way, fiction, it's not good just because it's true. No. A story isn't good because it actually happened that way. Again, a novel has to make sense. It has to be written well. The characters have to make sense. The story has to be preferably without any plot holes. And the argument, yeah, but it's true, is not an argument when it comes to fiction. Just as a by the way. So I want to have, in fiction, I want to be part of the author's imagination, whatever that might be. And if it comes to literary fiction, own voices for me also has another problem, because I feel, if I as a white author want to talk about my own experience, the white experience, and I'm talking about a Brooklyn divorce. First of all, I feel that it is also a point of criticism, political criticism, if in a book there's no diverse character. at all, because that's not how our society looks like, at least not now. But a Black author, for instance, or a gay author, I don't want to limit them to write about that particular experience, because that also means putting certain types of authors in certain types of boxes. If they want to write about it, Toni Morrison wrote about the Black experience. Not I'm saying is anything wrong with it. Absolutely not. On the contrary. But I don't want the expectation that if you have a gay author or a trans author or a Black author or an Asian author, they have to write, or we expect them to write about that. Because that is not what I want. And an example for what we would miss if we expect that and only publish and read that is one of my favorite more recent books, and that is Hanya Yanagihari's book, The People in the Trees. And this is about, it's set in 1950, about a young doctor named Norton Purina, and he signs up for an expedition, anthropological expedition, and then it's about the mistreatment of these people. And it's based on a true story, more or less, but it has nothing to do with Yanagihari's Asian background. And I don't want us as readers or publishers expect somebody like Hanya Yanagihari to write about a certain experience that is close to her own heritage. So own voices for me always gives me a little bit of an iffy feeling, because I don't want that, not only that I don't want anything to limit me other than the criticism, this book is not good. If I write something that's shit, then tell me. That's okay, but I don't want any limitations politically or from a literary point of view, but I don't want that for anybody else either. And that is, for me, always a little bit of the two-faced issue with the own voices. If I really take own voices seriously, I can only write memoir. Everybody else can only write memoir. And if we go a little broader, so you can write about something that is close to your own experience, meaning Black women, Black authors can write about Black people, Asian authors can write about the Asian experience. I don't want that at all. A good book is a good book, and a bad book is a bad book, whoever wrote it and for whatever reason they wrote it. I don't know. I'm interested what you think, but that's my 2 cents that I wanted to contribute to this really important, I think, and interesting conversation. So thank you very much for listening. I'm looking forward to hearing how you feel about this whole own voices discussion, and I will talk to you all soon in the next one.